This time I'd like to convene the following public hearings. First public hearing on creation of Diosynth Reinvestment Zone Number 1. Public hearing on the application of Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies Texas LLC. Presentation of the district's annual first rating and presentation of the district's annual report, Texas Academic Report, the TAPER report. And at this time, if there's no objection, we'll table those hearings until further in the agenda. Okay. I call this meeting of the Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. I wish to extend a formal and warm welcome to everyone present. Citizens may make comments about topics relevant to district business. Topics should be limited to 3 minutes. Comments concerning specific students or personnel will be heard in closed session. I ask that you turn off the sound of all electronic devices at this time, and please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, this time I would like to welcome up the Elementary Teacher of the Month, being introduced by Principal Sherry Hedstrom.
Good evening. How are y'all this wet, misty evening? All campuses need a teacher like Leslie Johnston. Beyond her abilities in the classroom, she serves as our unofficial year-round elf who delivers love and laughter. I'm grateful for her passions that run deep and her joy that overflows to those around her. Ms. Johnston teaches kindergarten in her Disney-themed classroom. Her students love the way she incorporates the multiple characters, but her students' parents love the way that she transforms their lives with foundational skills. About half of her class walks in with some educational background, either through daycare or pre-K, and the other half are literally transitioning from parents' laps to desks and chairs. As a result, she must meet their social, emotional needs from the very start. She creates a family that strengthens throughout the year and often follows students' remaining elementary years. Academically, she effectively lays the foundations of literacy and numeracy and prepares students to launch successfully into first grade. Most importantly, she helps her students understand and experience a love of learning. It's no wonder that our staff selected Ms. Johnston as our December Teacher of the Month, because she exemplifies the Christmas spirit all year long. She's often overheard sharing delightful anecdotes from her classroom or encouraging a novice teacher in need of advice or just a friendly ear. She collaborates with her team. She loves attending collaboratives, and even in her 30th year as a classroom teacher, is open to new ideas and implements them willingly. When teachers are at a low point or seem concerned about a campus or district initiative, she's usually the first one in my office, trying to help me problem solve to get us back to equilibrium. Just as she does with her students, she introduces ways to deepen the bond between staff members. I want to personally congratulate Ms. Johnston, our December Teacher of the Month. We are completely and totally blessed that she's a Mitchell Bulldog.
I'd also like to thank BBT for their continued support of the Teacher Student of the Month, or Teacher of the Month program. Great. Next up, I'd like to welcome Principal Sarah Rueda for the Secondary Teacher of the Month from Davila Middle School.
Hi, good evening. Today we have Miss Gisela Serracano Sewell. She goes above and beyond each day at Davila Middle School to make things better for her scholars, coworkers, and Davila Middle School. Miss Serracano is a 7th grade ELA NAC, which is the New Arrival Center teacher, but you wouldn't know it from spending a typical school day with her. Miss Serracano assists in the classrooms during her conference periods and also volunteers daily to help in the cafeteria during lunches. Miss Serracano works diligently beyond the 4 walls of her classroom to make Davila a better place. She builds relationships with her scholars and their parents through constant communication. She helps the students and their families in the classroom navigate their new life here in the United States. Ms. Serracano ensures that each scholar receives what they need educationally. Ms. Gisela Serracano Sewell's teammates had these things to say about her. Ms. Serracano takes care of the new arrivals and is implementing the new curriculum this year. She pushes into her students' content area classes as much as possible to support them and lessen the impact of a language barrier. Beyond her regular job, she is also supporting the campus by helping teach math class the 2 periods until a new teacher could fill the position. Additionally, she shadows an assistant principal whenever she can to step in where is needed. She's a dedicated educator. Ms. Serracano's efforts at Davila Middle School. She was recently also asked to present to the TEA Newcomers Across Texas Conference. Ms. Serracano said that she was grateful to have been able to meet other educators across Texas and to be able to represent Bryan ISD. As you can see this evening, Ms. Serracano embodies every characteristic of a great teacher in her everyday activities, and she makes Davila Middle School a better place to be.
Yay! Oh, babies!
I think you're going to have to move to the right a little bit.
Get Frank a little step stool. Yay! Woohoo!
Dr. Merrill, I thought you were going to get in the picture. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do only have five public comments at this time, so we'll go ahead and hear those at this time. Ms. Moody Ramirez, I believe you're up first. Maya.
Hello and good evening. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Mia Moody Ramirez, and I'm a professor and chair of journalism, public relations, and new media at Baylor University. My husband, Augustine Ramirez, and I are here tonight to show support for my brother, Todd Howard. As Todd's sister, I would like to see him serve as the next head coach and athletic director of the Bryan High School football team. More than 500 people signed a petition indicating they would like to see the same thing. The petition and hundreds of social media posts indicate there is an overwhelming show of support for Todd to have the position. The massive amount of support that was generated in a short period of time is an indication that a large percentage of the Bryan population supports Todd. Hundreds of people signed the petition and left comments stating they believe Todd has the skills and knowledge to fill the position and do a good job. My brother Waylon Moody and I created the petition to show that Todd has support. We are not here to force anyone's hand or to cause trouble. Ultimately, the decision is up to the members of the Bryan ISD School Board on how they want to proceed in this matter. The excitement created by the petition and the corresponding social media buzz offers a glimpse at the support citizens might offer if Todd becomes the next BHS football coach. Not only does Todd have ambition, he has a proven track record. He has played or coached several championships. He cares about more than just football. He cares about athletes having the total package: good grades, good character, and the ability to live a full and healthy life. Todd wants to help the next generation of Bryan athletes succeed. As his stats indicate, he has the ability to get the job done. Todd will bring new excitement and support from Bryan High School alumni and the Bryan community. Let's give Todd Howard a chance to prove himself. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Mr. Moody is next, and I mentioned earlier that there's very few things that we can speak on. The athletic director position is currently filled. It's an athletic coordinator position, just to clarify at Bryan High School they'll be available. So please, Mr. Moody, please come forward.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jerry Waylon Moody. I'm a longtime business and property owner here in wonderful Bryan, Texas. I'm also the father of 2 recent undergraduates of Bryan High School. Please consider Todd Howard as the next head coach of Bryan High School. He's a well-experienced coach with many accolades. He has coached or played for teams that have won Southwest Conference title, Big 12 title, the Grey Cup in Canada, and the NFL Super Bowl. If you knew Todd, he's a coach with a tremendous personality and an ability to challenge and motivate students and athletes. In my 10 years as head coach of the Bryan Blazers, which is part of the Pride of Texas Youth Football League, my brother Todd was a helpful guide in developing me. He developed my confidence and coaching ability of the young athletes. Once our team played for the Super Bowl of youth football, he sent his actual Super Bowl trophy from the St. Louis Rams. He wanted my student athletes to imagine what it would be like to work hard with a fighting chance to win a trophy. As a coach, he often gave me many tips on coaching. He gave me super advice on working with my coaching staff and parents. He also stressed that the composition of a team changes every year. He always made sure that I kept an open attitude so that I could respond to these changes. Please allow Coach Howard to bring this type of spirit to BHS. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Reverend Boney.
Good evening, board. Good evening to everybody that's attending. My name is Reverend Christopher Boney. I'm a minister at the Greater Tabernacle Baptist Church here in Bryan, Texas. I am a citizen of Bryan. I grew up here in Bryan. Moved away for 37 years. And in all the time that I've been here, I've known the Moody and the Howards. He's a personal friend. And I'm just going to say one thing. He has the experience. If you look at his background, he's homegrown, home-fed, right here in Bryan, Texas. From Bryan High to Texas A&M and abroad. He has the experience. Let's give him a chance. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Mark, I have a point of clarification because I'm getting the feeling that people are believing that we have a say or that we hire.
At this point in time, we're listening to all citizens' comments.
Okay.
Okay, the process for hiring the athletic coach, the Bryan High School head football coach and athletic coordinator for Bryan High School, that process is being finalized at this time. The position was just posted this past week. Normally, board members are not, do not partake in that, and when the process becomes finalized, we will certainly publicize what that process will be. But at this point in time, we certainly want to welcome any and all comments that will be heard by the board and into the various administration around here. This is your forum with which to make those comments.
Thank you.
So, thank you. James Rodriguez.
Thank you to the Honorable Board of Trustees. Tell you what, you guys have done a lot to this building since I've last been in here. I think I was here last time in the 9th grade. My name's James Rodriguez. I'm a fourth-generation Bryanite, product of BISD schools, Viking class of '85, Aggie class of '89, and I stand before you in full support of Todd Howard. He's a great friend of mine. I've known him for over 40 years. Todd has all the boxes checked. I mean, he's coached for over 30 years from the NFL level to all levels of college and the Canadian Football League. I think the large majority of folks here will agree with me when they say that he can bring this program back to the glory days, and that's what we want here. And so he has the coaching temperament, he has the acumen for the job, and I strongly urge the board at some point when it's time to consider him for the job. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And Dodd Wagner.
Thank y'all for letting me speak. Todd's been a friend for 38 years. Me and him walked the stage at G. Raleigh White in 1983 together, and I've kept up with him all these years. He's got coaching experience. He played football at Bryan High for Merrill Green, and I'm supporting my friend. Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for those comments, and we will certainly make sure that they're heard. Listen to. Again, kind of the next step in this process, the full process will be published out when it's finalized, but the position just opened this past week. And so the full job description and everything is currently available online. But it's certainly great to see a great show of support for a local Bryan High athlete and alumni. So thank you. Thank you for that time. At this time, we will table the rest of the regular meeting and reconvene public hearing Starting with public hearing 1, public hearing on the creation of the Diosynth Reinvestment Zone, number 1. And ladies, feel free to leave if you want to, or you can stay and hear all about Diosynth and everything else. It's perfectly acceptable to, you do not have to stay. Is all I'm trying to say. If you want to, great.
People from this side. Mr. Beasall, the boat is listing that way. Can you have some people on that side move over to this side? It's like a bad wedding. A really bad wedding.
Here now. Just us.
Just us.
Just us.
It's good to see us.
All right, we're good.
Yes, thank you. It's our public hearing regarding, we've got several items tonight that cover the same general item. The first one is to name a reinvestment zone, where we're going to talk later about a 313 agreement for this. We have Ms. Molly Hanley from O'Hanlon, Demerith, and Castillo tonight to go over some of these things. This is our legal representation for this project. We also have Matt Prohaska and the Brazos Valley Economic Development Corporation, some of those gentlemen to help as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Molly and we can discuss. The map we have up here is the actual area that will be in the subject property in this item.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background and explain why we need the public hearing, and then if there's anybody in the audience left who would like to share their opinions, they can follow me on this. To be eligible for a 313 agreement, the property must be located within a reinvestment zone. Typically, a project that comes to a school district has already begun its negotiations with another taxing entity, either the county or perhaps the city. And as part of their negotiations, that entity creates a reinvestment zone. Time-wise, they came to you first, and so this is really just a red tape step with the request to create the reinvestment zone. It allows you to consider whether or not to approve the agreement later. If you do decide to create a reinvestment zone here, the area outlined in red on the map is the area that you decide is appropriate for economic development. It doesn't change the taxable value of the land underneath it. It doesn't actually grant any rights to any tax owner or take away any rights from anybody. It's simply drawing a line on a map and saying, we're okay to think about economic development here. It's a procedural step. That's basically all I've got. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
She's a lot faster than you are, Kevin. I'm saying.
I'll open it up to the board and or anybody in the public. Going once. All right, if there's no questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, are you part two?
I've got one more. You ready?
Yeah, okay. And next, we'll close that public hearing and go into the public hearing on the application of Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies, Texas LLC.
Okay, well, good evening again. So, the public hearing on the application is actually required by your board policy. It's an opportunity from the board to hear the input from the consultants that you engaged when the application was first submitted to you, as well as hear from the community. separately solely on this item and to discuss the Comptroller's certificate for the project. I know these items are again later in your action and people might want to speak to it then, but this is just as part of board policy. Again, this is for Fuji Films 313. I know that you have an existing one and then one that's stalled out, but I'm happy to say this one's come here, end of the line, and presenting a final agreement for your consideration later tonight. The most important part of this is the Comptroller's certificate. As we discussed, when this application was first submitted to you, one of the required steps is that the Texas Comptroller's Office reviews the application and determines whether it complies with statute, whether or not the company is an eligible company, and whether or not this is a net positive for the state of Texas if you were to approve an agreement. And those three answers are yes, yes, and yes, according to the Comptroller's Office. And then it'll be up for the board to decide whether or not it's in the best interest of the district. Primarily, the decisions were the 313's motivating factor for the company locating here. The company will actually pay more in taxes than they saved during the 10 years that the limitation is in effect, and that the company will also be a franchise taxpayer. So that means it's an alternative source of revenue for the state of Texas, because this, to be eligible and to remain eligible, the company has to be an active franchise taxpayer. So upon their review, the Comptroller has certified this and said that the board is free to make the final decision whether or not to approve the agreement.
I know these items come up later in the agenda as well. No questions right now is not indicative that there won't be questions later, but if there is anybody in the public forum aspect, then at this time we will thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We will move into presentation of the district's annual first rating. Mr. Beasley.
Yes, thank you, sir. We're back again this year for our annual first rating. The Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas is what that stands for. And it's the process that TEA goes through to assign for lack of a better term, a letter grade across the board to all school districts across the state based on a number of criteria. They basically use right now, let's see. So now the rating as it stands right now is based on 19 criteria. That varies, has been as low as 3 in the time that I've been here, and as many as 20. So they change them from time to time. The ratings are assigned to A, B, C, or F for depending on the level of your achievement. A with superior, F with substandard achievement. And there's also a financial solvency review that's a separate part of that is one of the criteria. This is a school first in the audit life cycle, so it kind of goes over. You'll notice that this was based for the year ended August 31 of 2020, which is a little over a year ago. So it takes them, we go through our audit, which we're going through now the current year, but a year ago we were doing this one. Submit our PEMS data information in February, and then TEA reviews the audit, the PEMS data, and other things that we submit to them. It goes through that process of checking the data quality March through July of 21. They released the initial ratings in August of this last year. There's a 30-day appeal period if you want to appeal your rating, and then TEA releases the final ratings. This was happened November 5th, and we have then within 60 days have to hold a public hearing to discuss this rating. This is our rating for this year. Is again A superior. We of course are proud of that. We take great pride in attaining that level of completion for the work that we do. It's basically it's a district rating, but it's also very very indicative of my department and the work that they do, making sure that everything ties out, everything is as it should be. kind of look through the indicators. There's critical indicators on the first rating. A no answer on that, on any one of those is an automatic fail. They've introduced some different, what they call ceiling indicators this year. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Fiscal responsibility is another 6 indicators. Some personnel ratios and things that they look at is two more. And then financial reporting indicators to make sure that things match what they're supposed to is 3 more. And this is how the ratings came out for districts all across the state. You can see there's 1,020 districts taken into account, and the A Superior rating was 845. That's of the districts in the state. That's down a little bit, and we'll talk about that's because of those ceiling indicators that they've input this year, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Some of the detail of the ratings, the critical indicators are things such as filing your annual financial report or your audit on time, receive an unmodified opinion from the auditors, which that's what they call a clean opinion. That means there weren't any outstanding issues. And then compliance with payment terms on all our debt, and then timely payments to all the teacher retirement system, the unemployment, internal revenue service, all the government agencies and things. We passed all those indicators. Then fiscal responsibility indicators are certain things, cash on hand and current investments are sufficient to cover the operating expenditures. Current assets, current liabilities is sufficient to cover the short-term debt. We did lose 2 points on this. That was our 2. Our total score was a 98 out of 100, and that's the one that we lost the 2 points on. Basically, we had some investments that are longer term. They don't qualify in that short term. We actually are closer this year than we had been in the past, partly because we wanted to make sure that we did not slip up on that with the ceiling indicators that were also coming into play. Other things, just, your general fund revenues equal or exceed your expenditures or cash on hand. So basically those are measuring, can you pay your bills and meet your debts on time? The personnel one that we watch pretty closely, district's administrative cost ratio is equal to or less than a threshold that they set. We met that one. There's different variances on that. For example, TAPER does a different measurement than the first rating. So you may see different numbers out there that are being compared, and it just depends on what exactly they're looking at on those. But in this one, for the first rating, we did pass that. And then the other is that we didn't have 15% decline in student staff ratio. And those are going to be, they're going to have to look at some of those as they go through with the COVID years and those kind of things, how they adjusted some of those. But for our purposes, we met those at this time. Financial competence, the PEMS data compared to the annual financial report, that's part of that process that I talked about in the timeline. The external auditors noted that the annual financial report free of any instances of material non-compliance for grants or contracts, laws, anything on the federal funds, anything at all. And then, of course, that we made sure we posted our financial information that was required by law on the website. New this year, I want to just mention the ceiling indicators a little bit. Previously, all the indicators, excuse me, were given point totals, and then the final rating was based on that total points. What they've included this year was some what they call ceiling indicators. And so rather than a point total, they would be judged on a pass-fail. And a fail on one of these indicators would create a maximum rating or a ceiling. Several of them, I believe there's about 5 of them. And a fail on one of those would mean you would either get a B, and in one case I think it actually goes to the C would be the maximum. You still might have the number of points, but because you failed on that one particular indicator, you would still only get a C. And this just shows a little bit, so it compares, and the first column is the current ratings, and you see there that the A Superior, 845 schools received A Superior. In last year's ratings, it was 898, so last year was 88%, this year it dropped down to a little below 83%. And then you can see, of course, the B's went up a little, the C's went up a little, and the substandard all went up. And there's a lot of that based on those ceiling indicators, because some of those things If you're not careful, those can make a big difference, even though they're only one indicator. And then the other information that's included in the full report, which I believe y'all have a copy of, the superintendent's current contract, the reimbursements received by any board members and the superintendent, and then if there's any outside compensation fees received by the superintendent. There were none, but those would be listed if there was. And then areas we need to monitor, we'll continue to look to maximize our funds on current investments. That's been a challenge as of late with interest at where it is. Administrative cost ratio, we always try to pay attention to that. We want to make sure that we're monitoring that and maintaining that at the level it should be. Fund balance, we'll maintain our strong fund balance, keep it within policy limits, and that's something that we've been able to do year after year. Even through some of the difficult times, we've managed to weather those storms and maintain that balance. And then, of course, the change in indicators. I mentioned the several things that were now ceiling indicators, and those we'll have to monitor pretty closely to make sure that we don't slip up on one of those. They can cost you pretty quickly. And that's it. So it's another good year for the finance part of the thing in the district in that regard. So any questions on that or anything?
I think you mentioned it, but my question was this, so this covers through 20, so it'd be the spring of 2020 when COVID hit.
Right, this
So,
it actually covers through August of 2020. That's our year,
Okay.
our fiscal year end, August of 2020.
but that would,
Yes, but
but
spring,
that would have been spring,
right,
COVID hit,
yes, sir.
and we had the closure.
Right.
Everything started really rolling in 21, and now we're still, and you alluded to it, but I just want to make sure they are considering those as they're looking at these ceilings and various things that I think probably one of the challenges that I think of first is the fact that some school districts may not have as many students as they did 6 months ago. And that student count to teacher ratio is probably a lot more in flux than it ever really has been in recent time.
Yes, sir. And there's, as we've talked to our financial auditors through this process, it's been a challenge, but it's been, TEA has been working with us. We've worked with our auditors. They continue to be very helpful. But, everyone's looking for guidance for this as we go. So, it's kind of a team effort, which is a little bit different than how it has been, but TEA's been to date pretty responsive and, working on the unintended consequences of some of these things that they've done with, the hold harmless with attendance and those kind of things. And so far, everyone has worked well together, and we're getting through that, so.
We get, of course, this is kind of an after-the-fact report. I have no reason to be concerned about any of these, other than you mentioned, obviously areas we need to monitor. So, for instance, I don't know where we are on investments. I would, of course, love to maximize the return on investments to the extent that we are not supposed to or shouldn't take undue risk. And I also really don't know where we are currently, maybe I should, but I don't, on administrative cost ratio and whether we're anywhere close to a concern. I guess my point is that I guess as good a time as any to say this is that certainly I think we as a board need to know if there are issues that we're even close to approaching a concern so that we can be proactive about it. I think it's great that we've gotten kind of lulled into complacency with year after year we're doing superior ratings, so we're thrilled about that, of course, but at the same time we want to keep the string going and certainly want to be aware if we're anywhere close to a concern on any of these issues.
Okay. Yes, that actually is in the full report. Our administrative cost ratio is measured by TEA on that. Actually went down a little bit, not very much, but did go down some. So we're still quite a bit below. I'd have to look and see what those numbers are exactly, but we've been pretty steady on that part. And I don't see, you know, any changes that we've gone through this year that so far would indicate we're in any issue with that. But I can look and see what that is exactly. On the investment side, we just finished our first quarter, August through November. So at our January meeting, we'll bring an investment report for you as well. And we can see where we are and what our returns and those things are and what we're doing.
Well, when we talk about those things, sometimes we're not necessarily framing it in terms of this sort of criteria. So, yeah, I just sort of a reminder how much we have to kind of monitor, and it's kind of hard for us to keep up with everything. At least certainly that's true for me. So as we go on and as we make changes with regard to hiring administrators or whatever we're doing, if it's going to affect this in any way, possibly something we need to know about, that's just, I guess, just requesting that we kind of be made aware of if it's going to affect us in any way. And we've had discussion before again about the investment thing again, and we have a lot of money that's in our reserves and so on, and I just don't know you've probably explained it in the past, but I don't know what is safe and what's considered safe, what's not, and how much we can take a few risks to get a little better return. I know we're doing some of those things, and I'm glad we can do that. But at the same time, we obviously have to limit our risk, so it's tough.
Right, and everything that we invest has to be under the Public Investments Act, which determines what kind of instruments and things that we can purchase for our investments. And we also limit. We try not to ever go out any longer than 2 years on any kind of investment. So, we limit our timeline and the risk from that part. So I will try to make a better effort to, when I bring the investment report forward, we'll look at some of those kind of things and see how that ties into this and where we're trending and go over that a little bit more.
Let me ask it this way, and I think it alludes very much to the same question. We have a slide like this that says areas we need to monitor. Is this something that Forecast 5 can help us kind of get if you're saying we need to monitor and look at this, can we frame Forecast 5 in such a way that we're getting that report, on some of these different, and you don't have to answer that question right now, but when I know we've requested and we're working on a team of 8 training to look at how Forecast 5 interweaves with the board goals and various areas that, like this, when you tell us we need to monitor, can make sure that either A, it fits in here somewhere we can see it, or somewhere on this report we can monitor that.
Yes, sir. And that would be, all of these are items that would be, in the financial information, and would be something we can pull out and put in a report. Each one of these items to make sure that you're aware of them on a as wanted basis.
That's good. Okay. Any other comments, concerns, public concerns? Then if not, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
And hopefully the district annual report for TAPER will be just as quick, painless, and easy.
No
That's
pressure.
subtle.
I thought it was better to introduce it that way than, okay, we've got the 3 easy ones out of the way, now it's time for TAPER. But
Yes,
yeah.
sir, absolutely. Thank you for having us. We are here as part of AIB Legal Board Policy. It's also in Texas Education Code that each year we come before you and before the public, and we have a hearing about last year's academic performance in addition to just the annual report of the district. It actually includes a lot of different factors, including Mr. Besaw's presentation that he just gave. So how about that, right? It's good timing. So Dr. Morris and I are going to tag team this as we do in many other years. But first and foremost, Everything with the annual report is all tied into our board goals. You'll see that as we kind of go through the message this evening, but they do all anchor back to the board goals. The academic performance report, the Texas Academic Performance Report, or TAPER, is the bulk of this report in terms of the data, and it is for last school year. But when I say it's for last school year, please realize many of those data points actually predate last school year. Things like graduation rates, college enrollment, advanced credits, all of those things are kind of woven throughout the report, but many of those items are multi-year report indicators. Last year, as you well know, there were no accountability ratings in the state of Texas. Typically, that is also a part of this report, but due to COVID, the state did postpone and pause all accountability ratings. So part of this meeting tonight is we'll have the public hearing. We'll respond to any questions that you have, and within 2 weeks, the 500-plus page report will be posted on the website because it includes, like I said, a number of other items that we're going to speak to this evening. Dr. Morris.
Thank you. So one of the things that we're already using Forecast 5 for, and we're very appreciative of that, is to find our comparable district. We have looked at comparable districts for a while, but this year we have the same 5 and districts that are most like us in the state of Texas, and you can see that's based on total enrollment, low income, percent of low income, percent of English learners, and percent mobility. And just as kind of a point of clarification for mobility, the way that TEA defines that is a student who has been in the district less than 83% of the school year. So that does not include students who may move to several different schools during the course of the year. Those students are not considered mobile if they're staying within Bryan ISD. So that's kind of a different way for TEA to define mobility.
Excuse me for, go ahead.
So what I'm hearing you say is that if they're moving from school to school within our district, they're not counted as mobile?
True. That's the way TEA defines it.
Wow, okay.
So,
When I was reading this last night, one of the things that came to my mind, and maybe you've already answered it, is that, so we look for and find these similar districts, or somebody else does it for us?
so in the past, I have done that, digging through lots of fun reports, but Forecast 5 has a peer finder section that we can use to track these, and that'll make that a little cleaner and more efficient.
Okay.
And so throughout the report, when you see something about a comparable district, it's the average of these 5 districts. And so here you can see the student ethnic distribution, and just by looking at the circle graphs, the 2 at the bottom, that's the district and our comparable district, you can see we look much more similar to that comparable district, which is why we want to do this comparison throughout, because we want to look at how we're doing compared to districts that are like us. And then you can see something fairly similar when you look at the student information, looking at our percent of economically disadvantaged. You can see that both our comparable district and Bryan ISD are well above the state average there. Also for our at-risk students, our English learners, and then our mobile students. So this next section will move into STAR information, and again, this is from spring of 2021. I really want to take a moment to brag on our assessment staff, both at the district level and at the campus level. They worked really hard to get students here and tested last spring. We had 96% of our students who were eligible to test come and test, which is well above the state average of 88. So just wanted to take a minute and brag on those people because they worked really hard to get this done. So the next couple of slides are comparing, and we know that we had lots of decline in scores if you compared 2019 to 2021 due to the COVID pandemic. But this is just kind of showing that, yes, while we had declines, if you look at those orange bars, that is Bryan ISD. The blue is the state. We had smaller declines in the state across the board for reading, math, and science. We had a little bit bigger in writing and social studies, But those tests are only given at 2 grades, and so that may be part of the difference.
And excuse me, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that continues through time and what contributed to that. If it was the ability to deploy the technology resources that we had at a moment's notice, so that there wasn't as long as a gap between them getting resources, or just what, but that the gaps don't surprise me that they're there, but I'm pleasantly surprised, and even the ones that we are kind of below the state on, writing is one of those, it's hard to teach via computer. I mean, you know, and, but I'm very excited about the math, reading and science.
Dr. Morris, can you go back one slide?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know why my brain was so slow. You were talking about how proud we are that we're actually a lot higher than the state, and how hard everybody worked. And I'm just saying this for the people that don't know, which is probably not anybody in this room, but STAR was only in person, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So, therefore, when you said get kids to take the test, literally what you're meaning is we went and got kids and made it available so that they could come take the test in person, even when they were not an in-person school day person. And so I know how hard you worked, how hard Bryan ISD worked to get students to come and physically take that test in person. And I know this is only a graph, but this is such good payment or gratitude or awards to everybody who worked so hard to see this, a beautiful color graph that shows how hard they worked and how much it paid off. So I want to thank everybody that went out and gathered children and their parents and the kids that came up and took those tests, because a whole lot went into getting this done.
Yes, ma'am, it was
So thank
truly a
you.
team effort. They were very creative at campuses in allowing students to come late or early so they weren't there when the bulk of students was there. The assessment staff did an amazing job. Okay, let me get back to, already did that one. All right, this is a report that we just got last week from TEA looking at in-person versus remote learning. So TEA classified a person who was in person, meaning they were on campus at least 50% of the year, and a remote learner was a person or a student who was remote at least 50% of the year. So you can see the graphs there that show STAR performance that approaches grade level for our students, and for reading, it was about the same, in person or remote. Math, science, writing were all, the students who were on campus performed at a much higher level. Social studies, again, it was about the same with the at-home learners, slightly higher. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of the differences between our students. Another way that I wanted to show you this data, and I think this may be more telling, again, at home versus remote, but you can see the drop between 2019 and 2021. The students that were actually in our buildings had a much smaller gap than the students who were at home. And so I think that's just a testament to the amazing work that our teachers did on campus last year. Now, these next 3 slides are back after a hiatus last year since we didn't have STAR scores, but just show the state, the comparable district, and the district performance at, the slide is approaches, and then we'll do meets and masters. But you'll see the same pattern on all three slides. We are under the state as far as average at approaches grade level for all tests, and we're at or above our comparable group for all tests on this particular, or in spring of 2021. And then for meets grade level, which is that college readiness standard, you will see that we are the same pattern. We're below the state, but we're at or above our comparable group. And then the same thing for master's grade level.
And one follow-up statement to Dr. Morris's comments on that. That trend is stable across those three levels of testing, but it's also important to note, going back to Mrs. Waller's comment, we tested approximately 10% more of our students in the state of Texas did. A lot of those other students did not come on site to test, and so it's unknown what their scores were. And they were likely remote students and did not come onto campus. So if the trends are there, it'd be interesting to see how it progresses this year across the state of Texas with the continued impact of the pandemic on academic achievement. Interestingly enough, we also look at the TAPER report and we follow the percentage of students in grades 9 through 12 who have at least one advanced academics or dual credit course in their schedule. And we're pleased to see, if you kind of watch the trend over there from 2016 through 2020, that we've continued to inch up in that level of participation. Again, encouraging students to try that advanced academics course, to put their foot in that water and give them the supports that they need. Even during the pandemic year, we had students going out on those limbs with the faculty supporting them. So pleased to see that continuing to progress. Then we go into longitudinal cohorts. This is one of my favorite topics. When you talk about who graduated, it's a cohort. Well, what's a cohort? It's a longitudinal cohort. Essentially, if we're all in ninth grade together and we all step foot in ninth grade together, we're a cohort. And we are together until we end up somewhere else and are counted somewhere else if you're not with us. And so when we look at the class of 2020, we're pleased to see that the cohort was at 89.7% for our graduation rate. Again, that has inched up every year since 2017 and continues to be on an upward trend. Pleased to see that continue. Likewise, when we look at our graduates who do walk the stage, very proud of the fact that our students are walking with the endorsement. So the foundation program plus the endorsement or advanced diploma, more so than our comparable group and more so than the state of Texas. So again, those that walk the stage, Bryan ISD is preparing them well for their futures. And then as we look on to post-secondary institutions and those participation rates, the Texas Academic Performance Report includes data sets on what do they do after graduation. And so you can see here that this most current report is for the class of 2019, so the 18-19 school year. Again, going back to this data is sometimes a little latent, but it does give us some good information. We had 44% of our students, up again from the prior year, go on to a post-secondary institution immediately following graduation. But what's very interesting is when you look at Bryan ISD students who went on, 80% were able to successfully complete that year without any remediation as compared to the comparable group in the state. So those that go on are well prepared by our faculty to be successful in those institutions, and we're quite pleased with that. We want to continue to see that number on the prior screen improve, where we have more students enrolling in pathways that will lead to those post-secondary outcomes, but pleased that those that are going now are very successful. Yes, ma'am.
That's a really important statistic.
Yes, ma'am.
I was keep up with that. Okay, that's not a typo, is it? That was really.
I had Dr. Morris check it 3 times, yes.
You know, that's really important.
Yes, ma'am. It's a wonderful moment to know that our kids are equipped when they step foot onto that post-secondary institution. It's also interesting to note on the prior slide, I failed to mention this, but this is only those that enrolled in Texas public education institutions. It would not count those out of state or in private universities. The Texas Coordinating Board does not report on that because of the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board. There are other systems that we utilize to know that, the National Clearinghouse systems, those sorts of things. But on the TAPER report, this is the data set that's included by the state of Texas.
That's also important to know.
It is, yes, ma'am.
So it reconfirms, Dr. Warnerberger, a former board member, used to always say that he loved having Bryan ISD students in his collegiate classes at A&M.
Yes.
Because he knew they could handle the material.
Yes, sir. Very proud of that. And then I think we're back over to Dr. Morris.
We are almost done. So the academics is the bulk of the annual report, but as Dr. Ibarra mentioned, it's about a 500-page document by the time we get everything in there. So one of the things we have to include is, and I'm not going to belabor this because we've already heard from Mr. Besaw, is we have to include the financial documentation in our first rating of superior. We also include the district accreditation status, and you can see there are 4 statuses that we could have based on academic financial accountability ratings, our data integrity, and then the results-driven accountability reports that come out. And so for this school year, they did not issue a new rating. We're just carrying over our accredited rating from last year because they said there wasn't enough information since there were no 2020 STAR scores to accurately do this. So everyone's just holding, and then they'll issue new ratings after this school year. And then the campus improvement plans, which the board approved back in September, all of those campus plans will be included in this annual report. And then our goal is by the end of this week, we will have the whole document finalized, put together, and posted on the website. If someone does not have access or wants a printed copy, they can request one from the school district or any of the campuses. So that concludes the annual report, unless you have some questions for us.
How did Forecast 5 work for you?
I only used it for the peer finder, but it was very, very helpful.
Okay.
And I imagine that I will spend lots of time playing in that once we get I've been working on getting all the assessment data ready to send to them so they can start uploading it this week. So.
I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
All right, if there's no public comments, no further board comments, thank you. And we will, at this time, go ahead and adjourn the presentation on the district's annual report taper. And with the public hearings adjourned, we will pick up again with the regular meeting at 6:21. Starting with the standing committee updates. The city school committee, I believe, met.
Yes. I have to begin it by saying that we thoroughly enjoyed the musical selection that we had from our very own vocal legacy there as we dined in a Blue Bistro on a cuisine that was also by our very own students there. We also had in attendance the Director of Fine Arts, Pat Corbett, as well as the Director of CTE and Culinary Arts, David Reynolds. Both gave an update on their respective programs there. Additionally, we had Paul Buckner in attendance as well, who discussed a lot of things that we're progressing on in Bryan ISD, specifically as it pertained to Intermediate 3 and the things that are going on there. And I believe now we have the foundation laid, so we're all really excited about that as well. Our Food for Families drive that we talked about was absolutely tremendous. The outpouring of families and the support from, of course, Bryan ISD, the city of Bryan, as well as the community, warmed the hearts and soon the stomachs of many out there. It was an amazing time. And from the city side, the huge agenda item, of course, was the progress being made at Travis Bryan and the town park. Many should have already seen the traffic lights that's up now and working at the entrance. And hopefully we have a soft opening coming December 27th or the 28th. So be on the lookout for that as well.
I think we need to challenge the city council to some golf out there.
Big shots? At big
The
shots?
big shots.
Yeah.
I can't wait for them to open.
It's gonna
I would be
be
part of that. I signed up. Did you already sign up?
Well, to be the first to know.
Oh.
They haven't announced a grand opening yet. I'm curious.
That's all I have.
Good job.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
If you're serious, I think I better be sick that day, 'cause
I totally intend to bring in some ringers. And next up, we have the interim superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. It's hard to believe that we're wrapping up the first semester. And as we reflected today and thought about what we wanted to share, there were so many things. Even though we're in the middle of the third year of the pandemic, you would never know it because of the number of opportunities we've afforded our students this year. This is just a highlight of some of the few performances that we've held in the month of December. You can see we've had the Electric Light Orchestra, the Feast of Carols, Rudder had a choir performance. We had the Rangerette Christmas Market and performance. We had invited the young girls in the community to join the Rangerettes and dance that day. So just a number of performances and events happening in the last few weeks. We've been action-packed and just so excited to celebrate our students in this way. We've also been very busy. Give Joy, the foundation that continues to support the families in Bryan ISD, most recently partnered with us again, and we served 78 families for a total of 145 children in Bryan ISD. We had district and campus staff members, we had students, we had parents, faith-based leaders, and community members at large show up. The Give Joy Foundation awards $100 per child, so we all took the $100 certificates to Target. We bought gifts off of their wish list. We went back and wrapped them, and the next morning on Saturday, we delivered them to the homes, and it was so rewarding to see our children so excited when we arrived at their homes delivering. Again, a huge partnership with Give Joy, and we're so grateful for this opportunity. And a couple of the students were representing Bryan High School baseball and Rudder High School volleyball. The kids loved it so much, they've asked that we include them again next year. We mentioned already Food for Families Food Drive. This was an incredible opportunity. Coincidentally, it began on December 1st, which was the first day of our Essential 8 character trait philanthropy. So our students showed up in full force, giving back and serving our community with over 30 pallets of food donated. In fact, I stood there with KBTX that morning, and they joked and commented that it was more of the Bryan ISD parade than it was the Food for Families Drive. Just a huge presence, and our kids were so happy to be a part of it. And most recently, we had the Downtown Lighted Christmas Parade. It was, I don't even know, thousands of people turned out that night. And again, Bryan ISD had a huge presence. We had our bands marching, our cheerleaders in the band, a number of student organizations were present, our Words on Wheels bus was there, our transportation was represented, and several board members and cabinet members were on a float, but we affectionately renamed it as the Lester Banks float. He was on the float, and what we realized that night was those thousands of people out there all knew Lester, and it was just a wonderful night seeing them celebrate him. So again, a great opportunity for our school district to shine in our community that night. And then most recently, we've had more student athletes signing to take their talent to the next level. We have celebrated our Bryan High School student Faith Clark will take her volleyball talent to the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor. And at Rudder, we have a baseball player that will play, Chris Benavides is going to play for Blinn College, and Brayton Davis will take his baseball talent to Seminole State College. And then finally, we had our Rudder and Bryan students attended the Texas Thespian Festival in Grapevine, Texas, and we're pleased to announce that we have 15 students total from Rudder and Bryan chosen as national qualifiers to have the opportunity to attend the International Festival later in Indiana. So a great presence there for our students, and again, we're so proud of them. So that's a wrap for the first semester in Bryan ISD, and again, even though it's been a difficult pandemic year again, we rose up to the challenge and offered our students so many wonderful opportunities. So we're going out with a bang, and we look forward to starting the second semester in January
with more great celebrations.
Thank you. It was nice to have a return to Feast of Carols for one, but also one of my new favorites, which is the radio show.
Yes, yes.
I thoroughly enjoy that. Although I did miss something not being in the Queen.
Yes, we missed that too. We need to return to that soon.
So, all right. Thank you for that update. And next we'll move on to consent agenda, but I need to make a motion first that we pull the, to make a motion to pull the item F from the consent agenda, the Bryan Collegiate High School calendar. That has not been discussed yet with Blinn and finalized with Blinn, so we need to go ahead and pull that prior to that. That will come back around on consent agenda. So if I can get a second on that.
Second.
Okay. I make a motion, seconded by Dr. Harland. All in favor to pull item F, the Bryan Collegiate High School calendar from consent agenda, and table it until the next posted meeting?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, and with that, we'll go ahead and take up, consider an action on the consent agenda.
I move approval of all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Dwayne, a second by Dr. Harland. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, and that will bring us down into action for regular agenda. First up is business services. Consider approval of a resolution creating Dino-Sith Reinvestment Zone number 1.
This is again, the item that we had the public hearing about earlier, and I will let Ms. Molly go.
All right, just to reiterate, again, this is a part of the 313 process. If you would like the opportunity to consider the agreement later, you need to first adopt this resolution creating the reinvestment zone. We put in the maximum amount of years, 5 years, but it just needs to be in place for tonight for when the agreement begins. After that, you don't need to come back and renew it or anything like that. It's just a one-time action to approve the reinvestment zone.
I move approval of the resolution creating Dino-Sith Reinvestment Zone number 1.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harlan and a second by Ms. Waller. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries as moved. Okay. And that will bring us down to the second item. Consider and adopt findings under the Texas Economic Development Act on the application of Fujifilm Dino-Sith Biotechnologies Texas LLC.
We have prepared a document, they're called Findings of Fact, related to the application. The primary purpose of this are to adopt the 3 mandatory findings the board must do before considering the agreement. We've also created a roadmap for future boards in case this district is ever chosen to be audited by the Texas State Auditor's Office. And it provides all the information in a single document about what the application consisted of, the application fee, whether or not this was a qualifying project, all of these things into a single document that can be provided to any audit officer down the road. There's one unusual finding in this that you'll never have with any other board decision that you make. The Texas State Auditors requires a board to have a actual physical example that you consider the conflict of interest policy that's in place for board members before you take a vote, just because you cannot prove a negative later. And the fact that you just vote tonight, which for every other board vote that you take signifies that you are aware of the board's conflict requirements and that you vote doing so without a conflict. This just creates it in writing that if there's ever a question that you voted tonight without conflict. It's not a suggestion that there are any conflicts, and by that I mean that you are an employee of Fujifilm or that you are receiving a benefit as a result of approving this agreement tonight. It's simply a manner to prove a negative down the line. The most important findings are reiterations of the Comptroller's findings, but at the district level. One, the company will pay more in taxes to the district than they saved during the 10-year period. And that's because when they come out of the limitation, they go back for full taxable purposes. They still have enough value that they're paying taxes on for the next 15 years to weigh more in the little balance of saving versus paying. Two, that this is in the best, or that this is a qualifying company. This is a manufacturing project, which is one of the qualifying activities under the statute. And finally, the final decision is whether or not you consider approving an agreement in the best interest of the district. And to that, we have Moat Casey, the financial consultants, who have prepared a financial summary of what the terms of the agreement would be. And we also have written into the agreement protections for the district so that any negative consequences because you've entered into the agreement have to be compensated by the company. So if at any time your local auditor says that there is a negative consequence because you approve the agreement, or that Moat Casey runs the calculations of where you would be if you had not approved the agreement and this project was built versus you approving the agreement, the company pays you to make you whole for those losses.
I run this by Mr. Bisa, and I'm certainly not real concerned about it, but when you bring up that last comment, I asked Mr. Bisa, and I think he's tried to check on and get back to me, and he has, about a company that goes through bankruptcy. A company that goes through bankruptcy and basically collapses isn't going to pay us anything necessarily if they don't have the assets to pay it. Perhaps what they have goes to lenders or who knows what. I don't know. So, but I guess it would be a little more reassuring to hear it from you as well that you don't know of any scenario where we actually end up worse because of bankruptcy than we would have if we hadn't done the deal in the first place.
Exactly. So if there's two outcomes for bankruptcy. There's the first outcome is reorganization through the bankruptcy where a new entity takes over the existing facility and runs it under a new name. In that case, this agreement is transferable and the new company is responsible for the obligations for the agreement. That's the easiest outcome for all parties. We've actually had several projects that's happened to. The agreement is actually considered secured when it goes to the bankruptcy proceeding, and you are listed as one of the creditors who does get paid for taxes or any outstanding obligations they owe to you under the agreement. So even if the new project takes a year before it comes to you, you still get those back payments through the bankruptcy proceeding. There was a secondary option that I think was the second question you asked to Mr. Bisa about what happens if they do just completely tear it apart, sell it for pieces. In that case, our result or our outcome is dictated by Texas Education Agency because we would have to go back to do an audit of your appraised values for the district. That goes back to the Comptroller's office. They reset where you are in terms of your actual collections and what you did not collect because this comes through bankruptcy. They readjust how much you get from TEA, and then you're not exactly made whole in the sense of every supplemental payment you would have gotten comes through, but it brings you back to where you would have been had you not approved the agreement. So it does bring you back to where you would have been. It just does not make up those extra payments.
Sure. Well, and that's all you can expect in something like this. So that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for making what's really complicated
Well, thank you.
understandable by regular people, so thank you for that.
Well, to add on to that, for regular people, let's just talk money real fast because that's really, I think, what the district wants to know about, why you'd approve one of these agreements. And one of the findings is that this is in the best interest of the state, of the district. And so Moat Casey has calculated where you are if you approve the agreement. If you do approve the agreement later tonight, the district with the current estimates of the projected values for the project, will receive a $2.7 million revenue protection payment. And that money goes directly into your general fund. It does not go back into the calculations where you have to reduce the amount of state aid you get for this. This is just miscellaneous income to the district that you have total discretionary control over. In addition to that, we have negotiated a supplemental payment to the district. And over the 10 years of the limitation period, that comes to another $3.8 million. So altogether, we're looking at $6.588 million in payments from the company to Bryan ISD as part of the savings the company realizes if you approve the limitation for 10 years. And that's where we think the best interest of the districts are best served, because this is a way where you know that you have very limited options for raising money for a district outside of adding kids or increasing. This is a way that you actually get to increase your general fund and have not be subject to recapture for these monies.
Well, I'll move to adopt findings under the Texas Economic Development Act as proposed by the district's consultants and council on the application of Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies Texas LLC Comptroller application number 1621 for an appraised value limitation on qualified property for school district maintenance and operation taxes.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stasny and a second by Dr. Harlan. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for this.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, motion's carried as moved. Okay, next up we have consider and approve agreement with Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies Texas LLC Comptroller application number 1621.
So this is the board's opportunity to decide yes or no. So we've drafted an agreement. It's pretty lengthy and it outlines all the protections the district has in terms of responsibilities of the company, their obligations to continue to operate here even after the limitation expires. They don't just get to take the benefit and shut down. There's the penalties for failing for doing that include the actual tax savings they realized during the 10-year period. It also shifts all the costs to maintaining this agreement to the company, so you're never spending your local resources to evaluate the benefits of this project on the district. Our recommendation is that it is approved. We're pretty proud of it, but of course, it's the board's decision, and if you choose not to do it, then it doesn't get passed.
We've come this far. I move to approve application number 1621 in the agreement with Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies Texas LLC as recommended by council and the district's consultants for an appraised value limitation on qualified property for school district maintenance and operation taxes.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harlan and a second by Ms. Dwayne. If there is no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so
Any
much. I
opposed?
appreciate your time
Motion
tonight.
carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
All right. And next up, that will move us down into teaching and learning. Consider approval of the Board of Trustees College Career and Military Readiness Goals.
Sorry.
She's a clicker order.
We're going to put the loud one in the middle. I've got to stand back far away. Okay. We are here to discuss CCMR today, College Career and Military Readiness, and get approval for our goals that we've set.
So we like this graphic because it kind of shows how all of the plans and goals that we have to write fit together, and they're all based on those goals that the Board of Trustees sets for our district. And so this is just one of the many plans that fit in with the goals that we already write, our district improvement plan, our campus plans, our targeted improvement plans, our early childhood literacy plans, among many others. So they all work together with common goals set by the board.
Okay, so first let's talk about our timeline. If you remember, we started this a number of years ago, and when the state set this up, they asked us to do a multi-year timeline, and it was a 6-year timeline. We went from that 18 to that 19 is when we showed that huge growth, and so we started with a scale score of 90. We chose to keep it the same for that next year. If y'all remember back, that was when the state said, oh, just kidding, we're taking out that half point you get for all of the kids who completed a career tech pathway. And so as we calculated, we made the decision to show if we could stay at 90, that would still be substantial growth, getting X number, and I'm going to make it up, Jill. It was like 75 kids or 74 kids that received the half point. So we knew going into that, we would have to have, almost 40 to keep it at that amount that would now gain the full point. And so we were really excited with that. And then we had it set to increase each year, and then, COVID happened. And so we made some minor adjustments to it. If you look down at the bottom at that class of 19, which was really our scale score for the 20 year, we hit that 90. For the class of 2020, our goal was 90, but we actually hit that 91 based upon our calculations. With the class of 21, again, remember the state did not give us the full setup and so we calculated our goal was to hit 91. We feel like we ended up at 90. Could have possibly, we're right there on the cusp. If we had official from the state, it could have been at 91, but we were right there. The one thing, it seems like we're making very small gains, but you have to remember to move from a 90 to a 91 or a 91 to a 92. It's really multiple points, percentage points that you have to move. So if you had a 60, you would be at a 60% scale score goes into a scale score of 90 versus to get a 92, you would actually have to have at least a 66%. So moving 1 point is more than moving just one kid. It's a gradual scale that they use. The other thing that we want you to keep in mind is as we made this change, COVID did affect the number of students taking certification tests, the number of students who might not have taken the SAT or the ACT because they were no longer required. And in this last year or so, again, the state said, no, we are now not using military readiness as part of this to calculate scores because they didn't have a way to accurately monitor that. We are moving right along this year, and so we have got real positive feelings that we will hit this goal for this upcoming year.
So I have a question regarding that, and maybe I missed something in a previous meeting, but they're not using the military readiness. Did they do anything else to adjust that they're taking that out? Or they just left everything and said, you lose credit for all these? Yes. That's very nice of them.
So it's CCMR, but there's no M.
Yes, ma'am.
Even though we've been saying ever since day one, there's no way they can track military readiness.
Correct. I think they feel like they're going to be able to use those that may have signed up for reserves in the Texas Guard because they're working with the state of Texas to get those scores or to match students that have actually enlisted with the federal government. We don't know.
Seriously? That's a hit.
If they go to a military university outside the state of Texas, does that make a difference?
I'm assuming they would have probably met the requirements for college entrance, and so you would get them that way. And it's the same thing with some of the students who may have entered the military. They may have had a CTE certification, or they may have taken the SAT, the ACT, the TSIA. And so they still possibly could have been checked, but just not for the military readiness. They met it under college or career.
And that leads into my first part is, what are the CCMR criteria? How do students accomplish this designation? And there's two different ways, since we no longer have military at this time. College readiness is the first pathway. And the first is on college readiness testing. So students perform at a specific level on the TSIA, the SAT, or the ACT. The next way is to earn an associate's degree. And then you can earn 3 hours of dual credit in ELA or math, or 9 dual credit hours of any course. And then scoring a 3 or higher on an AP exam, and scoring 4 or higher on any IB exam. For the career readiness, it's earning that industry-based certification. There's also, for special education, there's specific ways through the use of their IEP that they can qualify for CCMR, and then earning a level 1 or level 2 certification. And again, military readiness is not counting at this time.
I'm just going to state the obvious on that last one. If they earn an associate's degree, they'll meet the one underneath that. So why even have, I mean, because we do. I'm just saying, I mean, if they have an associate's degree, they've obviously earned 3 hours of English language or math, or 9 hours in the other subject.
You're persnickety.
I'm sorry. That just seems silly.
That's just one of the things in the statute, so we included it.
Well, they took out the M.
I know.
They had to put something else in there, another line of something.
So because this is such an important part of accountability, and more importantly, because it's good for students, we monitor this and track this very carefully. So my office, Accountability Research Evaluation and Assessment, we work very hard to keep track of all this. So every time we get a new data file with test scores, we're updating that. We're sending it to the campuses. Don and Christina get copies so that they can track. Counselors help us on the campuses to make sure that the students are in the right courses that they need to be in, that they encourage students to take the different assessments. One of the things that we've worked especially hard on this year is for the testing portion. You have to be college ready in reading and in math. And so you can get that in any combination. You may get a college ready score on the SAT and your reading score on the TSIA. It doesn't matter how you get them. So we're very diligently tracking the students who have one qualifying score in a subject but not the other one, to make sure that we get them where they need to be, because that'll help that number to keep going up that we saw earlier in the annual report about the students who don't need remediation. And so we feel like that's a good track to follow.
And this may be a question for Barbara, but will the Five Lab stuff help on some of this tracking? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the things I've been working on this week, is getting all of that assessment data into Five Labs so we can track at least, you need 4 years of data to track CCMR, so we're going back a little bit further so that we can track multiple years of CCMR, and then it will serve basically as an early warning system in conjunction with the tracking that we're already doing, to be sure that we are targeting those students and getting them all the supports that they need to be successful.
Do you think that taking the military out of the deal is going to crush ROTC programs? And funding for that?
I don't know that it'll impact the funding. I'm not up on the enrollment for ROTC right now, but I will say that those numbers for us were not very large, because we were very, very careful of who we put in that category, because we didn't want to get in trouble like some other districts did. And so we were very picky about who we checked off was military ready. We had to have something from a recruiter or a letter from the student that said, yes, I actually enrolled.
And because our ROTC is set up that it's one period each of the 4 years, most of the students that are in ROTC are also in a CTE pathway or taking some type of advanced classes. There's other opportunities because it only takes up a total of 4 credits in your schedule.
So using the phenomenal data that Dr. Morris's department provides us, we started this summer with campus teams from all 4 high schools, the principals, counselors, their assessment coordinators, as many people as they wanted to come and brainstorm, and how are we going to strategically help students get to CCMR. And so that started this summer. Each campus came up with a plan of action and who was going to be in charge of each thing. And then this year, we've come back to meet again several times to go over their plan again. Are they doing the things? Do they need to add things to their plan or take things off? As well as where's their data now? And so that's really helped campuses keep their eye on it and be very intentional about students that they're targeting for certain opportunities. And so some of the things that went into those plans are college readiness strategies. And so one of the big things that really increased this year was the enrollment in our college prep classes. The college prep classes are for math or English, and students in that class complete a curriculum called College Bridge. And there are many universities across Texas who have signed an agreement with TEA that if a student successfully completes that College Bridge curriculum, they will waive the TSIA requirement for those students. And so that counts as CCMR, and that also means that they will not have to take remedial courses upon entering college. We, of course, as we've started a few years ago, offering our SAT school day free to juniors in the fall. It was free to any seniors who, for whatever reason, missed it in the their junior year. We're also offering the ACT school day. And again, this isn't just about the money of it, it's also about the comfort level, about transportation. They're not having to worry about somebody getting them someplace on a Saturday morning. And so it gives more students more opportunity to be successful on those exams. TSIA is offered free to students multiple times throughout the semester. They give it during the school day, during finals time, and they've also picked different Saturdays throughout the year to provide that test. Of course, we have our advanced academics courses starting in grade 5 with honors and all the way up into AP and IB and dual credit in 12th grade. We offered the PSAT 8-9 in 9th grade for free, and then the formal PSAT test for our 10th and our 11th grade students, also for free. And then the Advise Texas staff works with both Bryan High and Rudder High, supporting those students in completing the application process, financial aid, helping them search for scholarships. And then we've continued our MOU with Glenn College to teach dual credit at not only Bryan Collegiate, but also at our at Rudder and Bryan High School.
Before I move on to the next slide, Christina mentioned about the our increased enrollment in the college prep, ELA, and math, using that College Bridge curriculum from UT, right? We have just seen how the fall semester is going. The way this course is set up is that in order to pass the class, you have to complete the modules with an overall passing score, which then gives you the TSIA. So students are taking either one or the other. They take one in the fall and one in the spring. We were really, really pleasantly surprised by the number of students who have actually right now at this point already completed those components, those different modules for those courses, and kids are doing really well in it. And so we are very excited about that. I'm going to cover the career readiness part. So these are all of our career and technical education programs. We currently offer 19 different programs of study under CTE, and 17 of those programs offer an opportunity for students to take a certification. In district, the CTE leadership team created a program evaluation that they use with each one of those programs, and part of that, and the percentage of their students that are meeting career readiness is part of that CTE evaluation that they have. We have the opportunity sometimes when a student is, even though they're not in a complete program of study, that there are some of the certifications and courses that they can take to get the certification in, but they may not finish the whole program of study. Like a number of our students who end up at MC Harris. We don't have full programs of studies there, but we have courses that we can offer that things like the Microsoft Office certification that can gain them that career readiness without completing a program. And then the CTE has done multiple things to help the students and help the teachers to prepare for these certification assessments. They have bought some different supplemental resources to help with the preparation, the practice of these assessments. And at the same time, some of these teachers are attending different online webinars and training online to help the students through this process.
And we are still working on things. We have all these opportunities for students to take the college readiness exams, SAT, ACT, PSAT, TSI, all of those. And we want to not only provide as many opportunities as possible, but we want them to be as prepared as possible. And so we're working on what could boot camps prior to the test and or during summer look like to help support these students in being successful on those exams.
And just the last thing, we are or TEA is in the process of doing what they're calling an accountability reset, which is where they're going to update the methodology. I'm sure they'll address the military not being available. But it's a system-wide accountability reset that they're in the process of doing right now. So I am watching that very closely so that we can make decisions as information comes out. They're supposed to have the framework available May of 2022. And so that we can make sure that we're not caught off guard. We're watching that very closely, and as different information comes out, we're letting the team know about it so that we make the best decisions possible for our students. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a motion.
I move approval of the Board of Trustees College Career and Military Readiness Goals as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Dr. Davis and a second by Ms. Waller. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries as moved. And that'll bring us down to early childhood literacy and numeracy goals.
So I'm back again. So another part of House Bill 3 is the early childhood literacy and numeracy goals. And so I just want to talk briefly about those. These goals were initially adopted back in December of 2019. But before I'm getting ahead of myself, again, just like with CCMR, this plan fits into the grand scheme of things with the goals that the board has set for the district. So this specific plan, we started working on it back in October of 19. We brought it to the board in December of that year, and it was adopted. Last year, I came and shared our progress, or lack thereof, because we had no STAR scores to report to you, and made some adjustments in the plan, which you approved. And so now we're just in the required reporting each year of the plan and how we're doing toward those goals. So the big pieces that have to be included in the plan are listed here, but primarily we have to set a goal for third grade STAR, and then we have to have a way to monitor and track the younger grades as they're leading up to that third grade year. Plus, we have to have the targeted professional development for our teachers. So the plan, or the goal that was adopted last December by the board, we are not changing, but that we will move the students at MEADS grade level, and remember that's that college readiness standard, from the 36% in 2019 up to 40% in 2024. So this goal has not changed. Last year, in 2021, we were at 32%, so we didn't quite hit the 36% that we were shooting for, but we are still working on that. One thing that has changed in the plan, though, is because the board approved the purchase of MAP, we have switched all of our monitoring of our younger grades, K through 2, to MAP, which has streamlined that process and made it much better for teachers, and everybody's speaking the same language instead of having a variety of different assessments that we were trying to monitor our younger students. So that has been very helpful, and that's the only change that we are making to this goal, is just using MAP to monitor. Dr. Holcamp?
So we monitor our pre-K students, we monitor their progress several ways. One is our pre-K students, we monitor using our guidelines. We also monitor by administering the circle assessment 3 times a year. Teachers monitor students' progress through small group instruction and make adjustments based on the individual student's needs. The teachers also collect samples of our students' work throughout the year and compile a portfolio that is shared with parents and also reviewed by the teachers so that they can improve our students' instruction. In K through 3 literacy monitoring and progress, of course, Dr. Morris talked about MAP reading fluency. So we provide a MAP reading fluency assessment to assess our students' reading abilities. This assessment provides teachers information about how our students are progressing in reading. And it also gives us an indicator of what our students are ready to learn. So teachers can take that information and provide individualized lessons in small group instruction to prepare our students to read. To support instruction, we've also designated more time in the instructional day to teach foundational literacy skills. That was an update that we had made. And as you're aware, our teachers are participating in our Reading Academy, which is required by our state. And to support that learning, our content coordinators, instructional coaching team provide professional development that really bridge that, how to apply that Reading Academy learning to actually teaching our students in the classroom. So it's very focused instruction and professional development that is provided for our teachers. We also provide additional quality resources that support our teachers and our students in their learning. This year, we've added additional Heggerty materials as well as Next Step to Reading, and also magnetic letters for students to be able to demonstrate their understanding of reading.
Okay, switching to math, you can see that it's the same goal that was adopted in 2020, and the goal was to go from meets from 44% to 48%. The gap is a little bit bigger, just like I've seen in all the research I've read. The learning loss in math seems to be larger than reading, and so we took we saw a larger drop here, and we were at 28% for third grade math. And again, the only change we made to the plan was we changed our monitoring to using MAP. So we have everybody K through 3 looking at the same data.
So in pre-K, it's very similar. Math, the way we monitor is similar to reading. Of course, our teachers use our pre-K guidelines that are provided by the state to assess, as well as our circle assessment is given 3 times of the year. Our teachers monitor our students' progress through small group instruction and adapt instructions based on our individual students' needs. We collect work samples as well in math. So in K3, numeracy monitoring and progress, we provide, our CNI team provides daily progress mastery checks that teachers can use in the classroom to daily progress the students' learning, as well as concept quizzes are provided in our curriculum that teachers can use to check understanding and monitor students' progress. Campuses also have our MAP growth data in math, and they can use that assessment to determine what our students are ready to learn and design those individualized lessons to meet our students' needs. Of course, Tier 1 instruction, we use small group instruction to help deliver that instruction, and that allows our teachers to differentiate based on the individual needs of the student at the teacher table. One of our math teams focused this year on our CNI team is to provide lessons that support our teachers. The lessons include video lessons that are pre-recorded that teachers can use in learning stations to support learning, and of course, lessons that include hands-on manipulatives that they can use in math. Are there any questions?
I guess I do have one question. It looks like it was kind of going back and forth. Maybe I'm just getting tired, but between pre-K and then K3, I mean, what are we doing with pre-K currently, and how do we know that we're anywhere close to what the state's expecting of us in the pre-K area? Does that even make sense as a question? Give it your best shot.
So there is an assessment that our pre-K students take that's called the Circle Assessment that is supported by the state. And there are benchmarks, is what they call them, learning targets, for lack of a better word, that we can, after the student takes that assessment, we know, are they on track, are they where they need to be, or do they need some remediation? And so that's one of the primary, in addition to the informal assessments that the teacher would use in the classroom, but that's how we compare ourselves to the state. We use that circle.
Are they going to try to tie all this into accountability ratings? Do you know?
They haven't yet.
I mean, I think it's worthwhile. A lot of people think we just can't start too early because of so many kids having deficiencies at home, or they're not necessarily getting much at home, and we hope they are. But I think realistically, we know that not every kid has a great opportunity to learn at home at a very early age. So I think it's all a great idea. I just think it's also scary to think that how some kids, what they experience early on and what other kids experience and what we have to deal with in terms of trying to bring them up to speed. So overall, I'm excited about it as long as we have the funding and the ability to provide it. I guess that's another whole issue. But I was concerned about how they might just create one more thing for us to stress over about our scores, so to speak.
Right now, as far as I've heard, they're not looking at going below third grade star for any sort of accountability.
I don't, this wasn't definitely by any design that I did for the agenda, but I did think it was very interesting to see the very beginning and between the taper results and Ccmr having those conversations. Because literally, we're going to be monitoring these kids for the next 15 years, right? That we're talking about, the plans that are being put in place. And our challenge really becomes not to lose sight of them in the middle, right? And one thing that I'm very excited about at this point is we're all talking the same language. We're talking maps, we're talking forecasts, seems like we're narrowing, we're getting some consistency throughout that whole tenure of the school, so I'm very excited to see that.
Mr. McCall, if I could just echo one of your statements there, that same language is critically important, but what's wonderful about the system that the boards approve with MAP growth is that it is focused on growth. And now more than ever, and post-pandemic, if we want to go ahead and call it that. I don't know if we can or not. We're all kind of living it still. But in that moment, while there is learning loss, the focus is on growth. And consistent growth with a consistent instrument that's nationally normed over the time the student is with us is a very powerful tool, especially when we talk about the accountability system Dr. Morris described. 80% of the indicators actually focus on growth. And so if our students are growing, even if they're maybe not hitting the master's level, but they're growing from one year to the next, then they meet the measure according to the Texas accountability system. And that is something that we want to celebrate with our teachers. We know sometimes it can be a struggle to be able to move the child forward where they're hitting that master's level and that meets level. But the child has grown exponentially under the guidance of that teacher and that administrator, and it's absolutely to be celebrated. So it's wonderful to have the instruments to be able to do that now.
Great. All right, thank you.
I move approval of the Board of Trustees' early childhood literacy and numeracy goals.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Dwayne, a second by Dr. Harland. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries as moved. And then we're down to one. This room was pretty packed before, at the very beginning, but I'd like to welcome up our TASB consultant regarding the superintendent search process and search schedule calendar.
We apologize for not offering you a warm beverage.
Well, I think I can say it's good to see you again, but I'm not so sure. But nonetheless, we're here, and it is good to see some familiar faces. What you're having before you is a tentative draft calendar only, and it takes you through the entire search process, as some of you have been through before. But what we're going to focus on is the front end of this right now, is which would be the community involvement sessions. And if you'll remember those, we will come over, stay here a couple of days and visit with folks. And as well as the online survey, if you'll remember that, it goes on perpetually through the entire time. What our plan is, if you give me the agreement to go ahead, we would like to put that on and send that over sometime this week, and get it onto the website, on your website, and then allow the campuses to get the notice out. It's there, you can publicize it, and then it will stay up all the way until you will notice the leadership report through January the 20th. So it's going to stay up and running that entire time, so you will actually get a report of everything that we've received on the 20th of January. And it will be all the comments, as you'll recall, all the comments that have come into us. But we will would like to be over here on the 12th and 13th, meeting with staff and community and folks like that, if that's okay. Assuming that you are in person with this now, so that's an assumption on my part. But we would like to do that, and we would like to gives you enough time to get the word out that we're actually going to be here physically to meet with you. Now, as you know, or you may recall, but I'll refresh your memory, the online survey generates probably 5 to 1, or maybe even 10 to 1, the actual person coming in live versus, folks just like to go online and complete the survey rather than have to come up and visit with somebody. But nonetheless, our purpose is to let them know that we're here if you want to come. If you don't, the online survey is there. Same thing we've done in the past. So it's the same report. It will be disaggregated for you. All the comments will be there. You will see that we don't redact anything out of that unless it's something that we feel is completely inappropriate, then we will take that out. But as long as it's, focused on what we're looking for, then you will see all the comments. And you may recall that it's quite a bit of information that you'll receive from that. At that point, what we'd like to do is kind of take a breath and look at where we are, and then discuss with you about, how we're going to proceed on with the rest of the calendar and timeline along that line. So what I'd like to do is just kind of say, yeah, this is kind of okay for right now, but, let's reevaluate it once we get through the leadership report and things like that, if that's workable for you.
But I have two questions.
Sure.
So we probably, I know I already have people calling and saying, I have input, where do I go, how do I do it? So first of all, the online survey, where will they go? What is it going to be called? How do they look for that?
It will be on your district's should be on your district's front page website.
Okay.
And all they have to do is go to that, and it's a link, and they hit that link, and it takes them right into the survey. And so they just fill it out, and once they hit submit, it takes them into our system. So it doesn't go into Bryan ISD system. Once they get into the survey, it's on our system. So that way, no one can see what anybody else is writing. So, and we collect all that information on our end.
That will start?
We would like to start it this week.
Okay. And then the in-person, where, last time, wasn't it at the PAC Center? Was it at the auditorium?
We were actually at several places.
Okay, so you're
Recall,
going to do...
we were kind of around the district. What we'd like to do is submit some recommendations, and then if the district says, yeah, that's fine, or they might say, we'd like to go. Actually, when we did this before, the district said, we'd kind of like for you to be here and there and a couple of places, and so that's where we went.
The district being us? Okay.
The board or, the administration or whomever. Because you actually know where the locales are better than we do, and we will show up wherever you want us to show up. And Dr. Strauss, if you'll remember Dr. Strauss, she will be with me on this. Dr. Bob Smith, that was your field service rep, is no longer, he is retiring as of this week, and he is gone. And so we have no one to fill his spot. So it's going to be Dr. Strauss and myself that will be here working with you. And she would be here tonight, but she just has returned from a 2-week vacation in Europe. So she was just jet lagged. And I said, I should have made her come, but I was nice. So nonetheless. So, Ms. Walker, did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we leave it up to the district to get the word out, because we don't know your outlets best. So I think your communications office, pushed that out quite a bit the last time we were here, and did it effectively.
I guess the only thing I would want to add is, because we've tried to say it before, but I'm going to word it the best way I can, is we're going through a process, and the last thing we want the public to do is make any assumptions about anything about why we're going through this process. Obviously, we're looking for a new permanent superintendent, but it doesn't imply anything. It doesn't, again, suggest anything about where we might go with this. And we're at stage one, or we'll be going at these initial stages where we really want to find out what's going on with not only the public, but obviously with the with our employees as well as the public. So I just think that needs to be said again, that we're taking this a step at a time, and we don't know how far we're going to go with these steps, but we appreciate what y'all are going to do to help us get input on where the public is at this time and where our employees are, most importantly, and I guess students as well. I don't know. I guess we try to get some input from students as well. I don't remember actually. You do? Okay.
And that's correct. And I will give you an example that Mr. McCall and I visited about. Carrollton Farmers Branch, a few years ago, did this very same thing. They were kind of in a quandary. What do we do? What do we do? And they decided, we want to just open it up and let's hear from the public. And they did. And it gave them some good insight. Now, they decided to move on through the entire search, but at the end, they had their own idea of what they were going to do, and it worked out. It worked out very well. The second time we did that, they went a different direction. So it varies, but I think what you said is very appropriate.
I move to accept the search schedule calendar as presented.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Davis, a second by Dr. Harlan. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You'll stick around. We're about to close session, but I want to follow up with you on something real quick.
Of course.
So, thank you. Okay, the board will now convene in closed session, discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, .074, and, sorry, I usually have this, where's my student? Go ahead and put it under .072, and I apologize. I'm not seeing my other. See, 1 second. Oh. .082 and .0821. They knew those weren't on my list, so they printed them on my agenda. So, all right. No voting will take place in closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 8:07. We were back there a while and realized the stack of papers with a blue pen means I need to sign. But Tiffany, really? It's a couple of documents. All right.
See, this has your name on it, so thank you.
Are we good?
What it is, but find out later.
Okay. The board reconvened in open session at 9:07. No action was taken in closed session. And there's no action to take now, so if they're all in agreement, we are adjourned.
Thank you.